I'm Naomi, 27, and the quiet grief I felt for my grandmother just turned into a blazing inferno of betrayal. I always knew my family had its secrets, but I never imagined they'd lie about Grandma Ilara's will. My aunt, with her practiced frown and teary eyes, declared Grandma had left nothing but debts, a financial burden that conveniently explained why no one but me would inherit anything. But a tiny, insistent voice in my head, a whisper from a cherished memory, told me otherwise. It spoke of a hidden envelope, a secret will, and a truth waiting to be unearthed. Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button to make my day, and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Growing up, Grandma Ilara's house was my sanctuary. While my parents navigated their own complicated lives, often too busy for a quiet, observant child, Grandma's home offered solace. It was a place filled with the scent of cinnamon and old books, a haven where stories were spun from threads of memory and wisdom. She taught me to knit, to bake her famous apple pie, and most importantly, to see the world with an open heart but a discerning eye. She always told me, "Naomi, family is a complicated tapestry. Love the threads that hold, but watch out for the ones that fray." I never fully understood the weight of that statement until now. When Grandma Ilara passed away 6 months ago, it felt like the world had lost its brightest star. Her funeral was a blur of polite condolences and hushed whispers. My aunt, Lena, Grandma's only surviving child, took charge of everything. She was always the responsible one, the self-appointed matriarch of the family, even when Grandma was alive. Lena had this uncanny ability to make you feel both grateful for her efforts and slightly indebted to her, all at the same time. After the funeral, she called a family meeting, her voice laced with what I now recognize as feigned sorrow. She explained, with a sigh, that Grandma had faced significant financial struggles in her later years. "It's a shame," she'd said, wringing her hands, "but Ilara, bless her heart, left nothing but medical bills and a mortgage on that old house. It's a burden, really." Everyone nodded sympathetically. My parents, ever the agreeable ones, murmured their understanding. I remember feeling a strange sense of unease, a prickle of intuition that something was off. Grandma Ilara was meticulous with money. She lived frugally, owned her house outright for decades, and always spoke of her investments, however modest. The idea of her being in debt seemed utterly uncharacteristic. But in the haze of grief, I pushed that thought aside. Who was I, a 27-year-old struggling artist, to question my seemingly knowledgeable aunt? I just accepted it, albeit with a lingering sense of doubt. The family, particularly Aunt Lena and her children, seemed to move on with remarkable speed. The old house, which had been in our family for generations, was quickly listed for sale. Aunt Lena explained it was to pay off the debts. I offered to help sort through Grandma's belongings, hoping to salvage some heirlooms, but Lena politely yet firmly declined, stating she had it all under control. She sold almost everything, piece by piece, online and through estate sales, claiming it was for the good of the family and to settle Grandma's supposed financial woes. I felt a pang of loss each time I saw a familiar piece of furniture or a beloved teacup advertised online. It was like watching Grandma's life, her essence, being systematically dismantled and sold off. Each item, from the chipped ceramic teapot that always sat on the kitchen counter to the faded Persian rug in the living room, held a universe of memories for me. Seeing them reduced to mere commodities, listed with clinical descriptions and price tags, felt like a desecration. It was as if Aunt Lena was not just selling objects, but erasing Grandma's very presence, piece by agonizing piece. The house itself, a living, breathing entity in my childhood, was being sanitized, stripped of its soul, ready to be handed over to strangers who would never know the warmth of its hearth or the wisdom whispered within its walls. Then, a few weeks before the annual family reunion, an email arrived. It was from Aunt Lena, detailing the dinner plans and subtly reminding everyone of their contributions towards the reunion costs, which felt more like thinly veiled demands for money. As I read it, a specific memory surfaced with startling clarity. It wasn't just a fleeting thought, it was a vivid flashback to a warm summer afternoon, years ago, when Grandma Ilara and I were sitting on her porch swing. The sun was dappling through the old oak tree, painting shifting patterns on the weathered wood of the porch. Grandma was holding a thick, cream-colored envelope, sealed with a distinctive red wax seal. The seal bore the elegant, swirling initial E of our family crest, a symbol I had seen on old family documents and delicate antique jewelry. She looked at me, her eyes twinkling with a mix of seriousness and affection. Her hand, gnarled with age but still strong, gestured to the envelope. "Naomi," she'd said, her voice low and conspiratorial, a quiet whisper that felt like a sacred secret. "This envelope contains something very important. It's my true wishes. I want you to promise me, on your honor, that you will never open this unless you feel, deep in your gut, that something is terribly wrong after I'm gone. Do. You understand?" I had, of course, promised. I remembered tracing the elaborate E on the wax seal, my small finger exploring the raised edges, feeling the weight of the promise she was entrusting to me. The envelope had been tucked away, she'd told me, in a hidden compartment behind a loose brick in the old fireplace in her study. She had even shown me which brick, a subtle nudge with her foot, pointing to a slightly discolored one near the mantelpiece. The memory was so clear, so precise, it felt like it had happened yesterday. The memory hit me like a physical blow, a sudden jolt that sent a tremor through my entire being. The envelope. The hidden compartment. The feeling that something was terribly wrong. It all clicked into place with an alarming, undeniable certainty. My initial unease about Grandma's supposed debts, Aunt Lena's quick disposal of the house and its contents, her evasiveness whenever I asked about specific items, her vague explanations for the rapid sales, it all coalesced into a chilling suspicion. A suspicion that solidified into a rock-hard conviction. I felt a surge of adrenaline, a mixture of fear and determination coursing through my veins. A quiet, resolute voice inside me spoke. I had to find that envelope. My promise to Grandma, made years ago on that sun-drenched porch, now felt like a solemn vow etched into my very soul. The next day, under the guise of wanting to retrieve a childhood photo album I'd supposedly left behind, I went to Grandma's house. Aunt Lena, preoccupied with her own affairs, and likely confident that I wouldn't uncover anything, had given me the key with a casual wave of her hand. The house was emptier now, a hollow shell of its former self, echoing with the ghosts of forgotten laughter and whispered secrets. The familiar, comforting scent of cinnamon and old books was gone, replaced by the faint, antiseptic smell of cleaning products, a sterile scent that felt like a betrayal of Grandma's vibrant life. Each step on the creaking floorboards resonated with a new emptiness. The sunlight, once warm and inviting, now seemed stark and cold, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air, relics of a life meticulously lived and now carelessly dismantled. I walked directly to the study, my heart pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. The fireplace, once a comforting focal point, radiating warmth and stories, now seemed foreboding, a silent guardian of a hidden truth. My fingers traced the cold bricks, searching, my breath held tight in my chest, until I felt it, a slight give, a barely perceptible shift. With a grunt of effort, I pried the loose brick out. And there it was, nestled in the dark recess, exactly as Grandma had described, the cream-colored envelope, its red wax seal still intact, the familiar EA staring back at me, a silent promise kept. I pulled it out, my hands trembling with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. The paper felt thick and heavy in my fingers, imbued with the weight of Grandma's trust and her final wishes. I didn't open it then. I knew I couldn't. Grandma's instructions were clear, only when things felt wrong. and boy did they feel wrong. The air in the empty house seemed to hum with the unspoken deception, the silent screams of Grandma's true intentions being suffocated by greed. I slipped the envelope into my bag, tucked it deep within my sketchbook, a place where secrets could be safe, and left the house, my mind racing with a whirlwind of thoughts and plans. The reunion dinner was scheduled for that Saturday. It was the perfect opportunity, the only opportunity, to reveal the truth to everyone, to lay bare the deception for the entire family to see. The stage was set, and I was about to play a role I never anticipated, a role that would either vindicate Grandma or tear the family apart irrevocably. The days leading up to the reunion were a blur of anxious anticipation, a simmering cauldron of nerves and righteous indignation. I practiced what I would say, running through scenarios in my head like a meticulous playwright preparing for a crucial performance. What if no one believed me? What if they dismissed it as a desperate attempt to claim an inheritance? What if they sided with Aunt Lena, swayed by her years of carefully cultivated authority? What if this tore the family apart, leaving irreparable cracks in the facade of unity? The possibilities swirled in my mind, each one more daunting than the last. But then I remembered Grandma's eyes, her solemn trust in me, the unwavering belief she had always held. A quiet resolve settled in my heart, a steely determination that pushed aside the fear. This wasn't just about money, it was about honoring her memory, her truth, and exposing the deceit that had been woven around her legacy. It was about defending her final wishes against the avarice that had tried to erase them. I owed it to her, to the woman who had loved me unconditionally and instilled in me the values of integrity and courage. Saturday arrived, a deceptively sunny day that belied the storm brewing within me. The clear blue sky and warm breeze felt like a cruel joke, mocking the turmoil in my soul. The reunion was held at a local banquet hall, a place of forced smiles and awkward small talk, a venue designed for pleasant superficiality. Families, distant cousins, and rarely seen relatives mingled, their conversations punctuated by the clinking of glasses and the occasional burst of forced laughter. Aunt Lena, in a perfectly tailored dress that somehow seemed to accentuate her air of false piety, moved through the room with practiced grace, her smile bright, her demeanor exuding an air of self-importance and quiet authority. She greeted everyone with a flourish, playing the part of the gracious hostess, the benevolent matriarch. She even gave me a brief, almost dismissive hug, her cheek brushing mine in a fleeting, cold contact. "Naomi, dear," she said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "So glad you could make it. You've been so quiet lately." Little did she know the quiet was the calm before the storm, the deep breath before the plunge into the icy waters of truth. Every polite nod, every forced smile, every hollow compliment amplified the sense of impending confrontation, the dramatic unraveling that was just moments away. Dinner was a drawn-out affair of bland chicken and overcooked vegetables, a meal as tasteless and forgettable as the superficial conversations that accompanied it. The discussions around me felt hollow, filled with superficial pleasantries, thinly veiled gossip, and endless updates on careers and children, all designed to avoid any real depth. I picked at my food, my stomach churning with nerves and a growing sense of righteous anger that was bubbling just beneath the surface. I kept my eyes on Aunt Lena, watching her interactions, her confident posture, her almost regal bearing as she held court among various family clusters. She seemed to revel in the attention, basking in the family's collective agreement that she was handling Grandma's affairs with competence and grace, a true paragon of responsibility. It was a performance, a carefully orchestrated deception, a masterpiece of manipulation. And I was about to rip the curtain down, exposing the true nature of the player behind the benevolent facade. The anticipation was almost unbearable, a physical weight in my chest. As dessert was being served, Aunt Lena rose, tapping her spoon against a glass, the delicate chink echoing through the cavernous hall. A hush fell over the room, as if on cue. Family, she announced, her voice resonating through the hall, rich with a theatrical blend of sentimentality and self-congratulation. I just wanted to say how wonderful it is to see all of you here. It's been a challenging year for us, with Ilara's passing. A true loss for us all. She paused, a hand fluttering to her chest in a gesture of feigned sorrow. But we've come through it together. And I'm proud to say that, despite the financial difficulties Ilara left behind, we've managed to settle everything. The house is sold, the debts are paid, and we can all move forward, knowing she's at peace. She smiled, a self-congratulatory smirk that made my blood boil, a triumphant gleam in her eyes that sealed her deception in my mind. A few people clapped politely, their applause a faint ripple in the silence. My moment had arrived, the moment I had been planning, fearing, and anticipating for weeks. There was no turning back now. I took a deep breath, the adrenaline surging through me, a powerful current of energy. My hands, hidden beneath the table, clutched the heavy envelope, its presence a tangible anchor in the swirling vortex of my emotions. I pushed my chair back, the scrape of it against the polished floor momentarily drawing attention. The sound, amplified in the sudden quiet, seemed to reverberate through the room. Aunt Lena looked at me, her smile faltering slightly, a flicker of irritation crossing her features. "Naomi, dear? Is something wrong?" she asked, her tone laced with a hint of thinly veiled annoyance, a subtle warning in her voice. I stood up, my voice, surprisingly steady, cutting through the murmurs that had begun to rise. "Actually, Aunt Lena, there is something I'd like to say." My gaze swept across the faces in the room, some curious, some annoyed, some already sensing the dramatic shift in the atmosphere, a quiet dread beginning to settle in their expressions. Aunt Lena's eyebrows rose, her carefully constructed composure beginning to show its first hairline cracks. "Now isn't really the time, Naomi. We're celebrating Ilara's memory and our family's resilience." Her voice was sharper now, a hint of steel beneath the polite veneer. "No," I said, my voice gaining strength, each word delivered with unwavering conviction. "Now is exactly the time." My eyes, fixed on Aunt Lena, held a resolute defiance. I remember Grandma Ilara not just as a grandmother, but as a woman of integrity and foresight, a woman who always planned ahead and valued truth above all else. And I remember a very specific conversation we had, years ago, about her will. The mention of the will, especially a second, unknown one, sent a ripple of discomfort through the room, a collective ripple of unease. Aunt Lena's face tightened, her eyes narrowing, a dangerous glint entering them. Her carefully constructed facade was starting to crack, revealing the raw fear beneath. "Naomi, I assure you, everything regarding Ilara's estate has been handled properly and legally. There's nothing more to discuss, and frankly, you're being disrespectful." Her voice was low and furious now, barely a hiss, a desperate attempt to regain control of the narrative. "Oh, but there is," I countered, my voice clear and strong, cutting through her agitated whisper. With a deliberate, almost theatrical motion, I pulled the cream-colored envelope from my bag, holding it aloft for everyone to see. It felt like a beacon in my hand, a tangible representation of truth, a silent accusation against her carefully constructed lies. Grandma Ilara gave me this envelope years ago. She told me to open it only if I felt something was terribly wrong after she passed. And Aunt Lena, I have to say, something feels very, very wrong. A collective gasp went through the room, a synchronized exhalation of shock and disbelief. Whispers erupted, a low buzzing hum that quickly escalated. The clinking of cutlery stopped abruptly, replaced by an unnerving silence. All eyes, wide and bewildered, were riveted on me and the envelope, a silent, expectant audience. Aunt Lena's face went ghastly pale, her meticulously applied makeup suddenly seeming stark against her ashen skin. Her composure, which had been so carefully maintained, finally shattered, revealing a mask of disbelief and dawning horror. Her breathing became shallow and rapid, her chest heaving visibly. I continued, my voice steady now, each word landing with the weight of undeniable truth, a hammer blow against her edifice of lies. This is no casual note, Aunt Lena. This is a formally drawn will, signed and dated, with clear instructions and specific bequests, witnessed and notarized. It is dated 5 years ago, long after Grandma had supposedly been struggling financially, a convenient narrative you so painstakingly constructed. I held the document up, letting everyone see its official appearance, the crisp paper, the formal legal language, the distinct signature of the notary public, a recognizable name in the community from decades past. Then, my voice filled with a mixture of grief for my grandmother's quiet foresight, anger at her deception, and unwavering determination to honor her wishes, I began to read. To my dearest family, I started, my voice wavering slightly with the raw emotion that threatened to overwhelm me, but I quickly regained my composure, focusing on the words, drawing strength from them. I write this with a heavy heart, knowing that by the time these words are read, I will no longer be with you. I have seen the way some of you operate, the subtle manipulations, the focus on material gain above genuine connection and familial love. It has pained me deeply, a constant ache in my soul. This document, therefore, serves as my true and final will, superseding any other document or verbal agreement that may be presented as such, and reflecting my ultimate and unchangeable wishes for my estate. Aunt Lena let out a small, choked sound, a strangled gasp that was half whimper, half growl. Her eyes, wide and dilated with terror, were fixed on me, her face a mask of disbelief and utter defeat. The rest of the family sat frozen, their eyes darting between me and Aunt Lena, a silent drama unfolding before them, the air thick with tension. I continued, my voice steady now, each word landing with the weight of undeniable truth, an unstoppable force dismantling her carefully built house of cards. I have watched with quiet observation over the years. I have seen who truly cares, who offers genuine support, who visits not for obligation but for love, and who is merely waiting for an opportunity to capitalize on my eventual passing. I have chosen to be discreet about my financial affairs, for reasons that will now become clear, contrary to any claims that may be made by certain individuals. I am not, nor have I ever been, in debt. My assets, both liquid and property, are substantial, and they are to be distributed according to my true wishes, and not according to the opportunistic schemes of others. A low murmur swept through the room, a collective exhalation of surprise and confusion. Some people exchanged shocked glances, their faces reflecting the dawning realization of the magnitude of Aunt Lena's deception. Aunt Lena was breathing heavily, her chest heaving, her hands clenching and unclenching beneath the table, her composure finally shattered beyond repair. "And now," I read, my voice rising slightly, clear and resonant, filling every corner of the silent hall, for the most crucial part, the culmination of my life's work and my deepest desires. After much thought and careful consideration, after observing the true hearts and intentions of those around me, I leave everything, absolutely everything, my bees. Entire estate, including my beloved house, my extensive investments, and all my personal belongings, to my beloved granddaughter, Naomi Blake. The words hung in the air, a resounding declaration that silenced every whisper, every gasp. The room was absolutely still, save for the faint hum of the air conditioning and the ragged breathing of Aunt Lena. I looked up from the will, my eyes scanning the faces before me. Every single person in that room was staring at me, their expressions a kaleidoscope of shock, confusion, disbelief, and in some cases, outright anger. Aunt Lena was white as a sheet, her mouth slightly agape, her eyes wide and unblinking, filled with a venomous fury that made my skin crawl, and an utter defeat that seemed to drain the very color from her face. Her children, who had been enjoying their desserts moments before, now looked like startled deer caught in the glare of headlights, their faces mirroring their mother's shock and dawning dread. I continued reading, the rest of the will detailing specific instructions for my inheritance, confirming the exact extent of Grandma's assets, from specific stock portfolios to detailed bank accounts, leaving ROME no room for doubt. It also explicitly stated that Aunt Lena was to receive nothing, not even a token, for her perceived deceit and manipulative behavior throughout Grandma's life, laying bare the true reasons behind her exclusion. The document concluded with a final, poignant sentence, the one that had resonated so deeply with me when I first read it in the privacy of my home. I leave everything to Naomi Blake, who stayed when others did not, who offered comfort without expectation, and whose quiet presence was a constant source of joy in my twilight years. The silence that followed was deafening, a thick, suffocating blanket. It was a silence pregnant with unspoken accusations, shattered illusions, and simmering resentment. Then, the dam broke. One of Aunt Lena's sons, a man named Mark, who had always been particularly smarmy and opportunistic, with a slick smile and a calculating gleam in his eyes, slammed his hand on the table, making the silverware jump with a jarring clatter. "This is outrageous!" he shouted, his face red with indignation, veins bulging in his neck. "This is a forgery, a complete fabrication. Lena, tell them this is a lie, a sick joke." His voice was laced with desperation, a thin attempt to salvage their crumbling narrative. Aunt Lena, however, seemed to have lost her voice. She just stared at me, her eyes filled with a venomous fury that made my skin crawl, a silent promise of retribution. Her mouth worked, but no sound emerged. My own mother, usually so timid, so hesitant to rock the boat, spoke up, her voice surprisingly strong, cutting through the rising murmurs. "Naomi, what is this? Your aunt said Grandma was in debt, that she had nothing left." Her eyes were wide, with a mix of shock, confusion, and dawning horror as the truth began to sink in. She lied. "Mom," I stated simply, my gaze unwavering as I met my mother's gaze, offering her the unvarnished truth she deserved. Grandma knew she would. That's why she gave me this, why she instructed me to hold on to it until the right moment. She foresaw this deception. A low murmur swept through the room again. Some people exchanged shocked glances, their eyes darting nervously between me and Aunt Lena. A few distant cousins, who had always been more financially astute, started whispering amongst themselves. "I always thought Ilara was quite comfortable," one woman whispered to her husband, her voice laced with surprise. "She never seemed to struggle, never complained about money." Another added, "She always seemed to have a little something extra to give away, always generous." These quiet affirmations from other family members lent further credibility to my claims, chipping away at Aunt Lena's already fractured credibility. The room erupted into a cacophony of voices, a chaotic symphony of outrage and disbelief. Some people were talking excitedly, their voices rising in volume, their faces animated with newfound understanding. Others were shaking their heads in utter disbelief, their expressions a mixture of pity and contempt for Aunt Lena. Aunt Lena, finally regaining some semblance of control, though her hands were still trembling uncontrollably, tried to rally, her voice a desperate, high-pitched shriek. "This is a fabrication! Naomi, you are trying to defraud this family. This is a cruel joke, a malicious attempt to steal what rightfully belongs to me," she shrieked, her voice cracking with the strain of her crumbling composure. "It's no joke, Aunt Lena," I said, my voice calm amidst the rising chaos, a steady anchor in the storm. I held up the will again, letting the official document speak for itself. This is a legally binding document. It is authenticated, witnessed, and notarized. And if you wish to challenge it, I suggest you consult with an attorney, because I will fight to ensure Grandma's true wishes are honored, every last one of them, with every fiber of my being. My words seemed to solidify the undeniable reality of the situation. Some family members, particularly those who had always been closer to Aunt Lena, or perhaps had been complicit in her schemes, started to gather their belongings, their faces etched with a mixture of anger, embarrassment, and a dawning sense of self-preservation. Mark, still fuming, stood up, knocking over his chair with a loud bang that echoed through the room. "This is an insult," he snarled, glaring at me with unbridled contempt. "We're leaving! This family is disgusting." He practically grabbed Aunt Lena's arm, pulling her roughly towards the exit. She stumbled, her usually composed demeanor completely shattered. Her shoulders slumped in defeat, her face a mask of bitter fury and abject humiliation. Her hurried departure, along with her family's, left a palpable void, an empty space that seemed to hum with the lingering tension of the dramatic confrontation. Others, less invested in Aunt Lena's narrative, remained, their expressions a mixture of curiosity, dawning understanding, and a quiet sense of relief that the truth had finally been revealed. My parents, sitting opposite me, looked utterly bewildered, their faces a canvas of conflicting emotions. My mother had tears in her eyes, whether from shock, sadness, or a strange mix of both, I couldn't tell. My father, usually quiet and stoic, cleared his throat. "Naomi," he began, his voice hesitant, almost a whisper. Is this really true? All of it?" His gaze was searching, trying to find some semblance of order in the chaos. "Every word, Dad," I confirmed, looking directly at him, my gaze unwavering. "Grandma Ilara trusted me with this. She gave me her word, and I promised her I would do this, that I would ensure her final wishes were honored." The quiet affirmation of her trust, the solemn weight of the promise, lent an almost sacred quality to my words. As Aunt Lena and her immediate family stormed out of the banquet hall, their hurried departure leaving a palpable void, a strange mix of relief and exhaustion washed over me. The tension that had coiled in my stomach for weeks, a tight knot of anxiety and anticipation, finally began to unwind, slowly, like a spring released. I looked around the room. The remaining family members, those who hadn't sided with Aunt Lena's dramatic exit, were still processing the bombshell I had dropped, their faces a mixture of lingering shock and quiet contemplation. Some were whispering amongst themselves, their voices low and urgent. Others stared at the empty space where Aunt Lena had been, their faces a mixture of morbid curiosity and a sense of dawning realization. My mother, still teary-eyed, reached across the table and took my hand. Her grip was surprisingly firm, a silent gesture of support and validation. "Naomi," she said, her voice barely a whisper, thick with emotion. "Why didn't you tell us? We could have helped." Grandma made me promise not to open it unless things felt wrong," I explained, meeting her gaze, my voice soft but resolute. "And she was very specific that I shouldn't tell anyone about its existence until it was absolutely necessary. She knew there might be complications. She foresaw this entire situation. Mom, she trusted me to reveal it at the right time, to the right people." The unspoken accusation hung in the air. She knew Aunt Lena would lie, and that her lies would be so convincing, so pervasive, that only a dramatic revelation would expose them. My father, who had been listening intently, his brow furrowed in thought, finally spoke up. "So, Grandma wasn't in debt at all then?" he asked, his voice still tinged with disbelief, as if trying to reconcile the stark contrast between Aunt Lena's narrative and the truth. Lena said she had almost nothing, that she was practically destitute. "She had a lot, Dad," I clarified, gesturing to the will, which still lay on the table, a silent witness to the truth. "More than any of us knew. She was a very private person about her finances. A meticulous planner. And she planned this meticulously. Every detail accounted for. She wanted her wishes to be honored, and she clearly foresaw that they might not be, especially by Aunt Lena and her self-serving motives. The dramatic exit of Aunt Lena and her children, their faces contorted with fury, spoke volumes, providing a visceral confirmation of Grandma's foresight. A quiet elderly cousin, Uncle Arthur, who had been sitting quietly observing the entire scene with a calm, almost serene expression, finally spoke up. He had always been a kind, gentle soul, with a surprisingly perceptive mind. Ilara was a shrewd woman, he said, his voice raspy with age, but clear and steady. And she had a sharp mind, sharper than most people gave her credit for. It always struck me as odd that she would have run into such financial difficulties in her later years. She built that house up from nothing, brick by brick, with her own 2 hands. And she was always so meticulous with her investments, always talking about her nest egg. His words seemed to confirm my claims, lending further credibility to the narrative I had just presented, grounding it in the shared history of the family. His quiet wisdom resonated, cutting through the lingering tension. Another cousin, a younger woman named Chloe, whom I hadn't seen in years, leaned forward, her eyes wide with curiosity and a touch of awe. So, Naomi, what does this mean? You inherit everything? All of Grandma's wealth? Her voice was hushed, almost reverent. I nodded, feeling a strange mix of vindication and surrealism. According to this will, yes. The house, her investments, everything she painstakingly accumulated throughout her life. I looked down at the document again, the weight of it, both literally and figuratively, settling in my hands. She stipulated that I was the only one who stayed by her side when others were less present, less supportive. She valued genuine connection over superficial visits. The last part of my sentence was delivered with a subtle glance towards the empty seats that Aunt Lena and her family had occupied. A quiet, yet powerful indictment of their self-serving nature. Their absence in Grandma's later years, which was now explicitly mentioned in her will, a poignant testament to their neglect. The conversations picked up again, but this time, the tone was distinctly different. There was less shock and more genuine curiosity, interspersed with whispers of admiration and perhaps a touch of envy, but mostly an earnest desire to understand the full scope of Aunt Lena's deception. Some family members approached me, their initial awkwardness quickly giving way to genuine questions, and even a few heartfelt apologies for not having seen through Aunt Lena's elaborate charade. I always thought something was off about how quickly the house was put up for sale, a distant aunt admitted, shaking her head slowly, a look of profound regret on her face. Lena was so insistent that it was necessary. The Grandma's debts were piling up. She even pressured me to contribute to what she called Grandma's debt relief fund. Another cousin grumbled, clearly feeling duped. His voice laced with a mixture of anger and self-reproach. I sent her a few $100s, thinking I was helping Ilara in her time of need. I wonder what she actually did with that money. His question hung in the air, a silent accusation. The full extent of Aunt Lena's deceit began to unravel, piece by piece, as family members shared their own experiences and suspicions, each story adding another layer to the portrait of her manipulation. It became clear that she had systematically exploited their trust and their grief, painting a false picture of Grandma's financial state to her own immense benefit. The debts were a convenient fabrication, a smokescreen to justify her actions and allow her to liquidate Grandma's assets for her personal gain, enriching herself at the expense of her own mother's legacy and the Dawn. Trust of her family. The money my cousin contributed, and likely other similar donations from well-meaning relatives, were undoubtedly pocketed by Aunt Lena, adding insult to injury, a cruel exploitation of their generosity. The thought of it made my stomach churn with a mixture of anger and disgust, but it also fueled my determination to ensure justice was served, swiftly and decisively. I sat back down, the will carefully folded and placed beside me, a silent guardian of truth. The dinner, which had started as a tense family gathering, a mere formality, had transformed into an impromptu truth-telling session. a confessional for the family's collective blindness, a public reckoning. I felt a strange sense of calm amidst the lingering buzz of conversation, a quiet sense of accomplishment. The biggest hurdle, the initial revelation, was over. The truth was out, exposed for all to see. A raw, undeniable fact. My mother, her eyes still red, squeezed my hand again, her touch warm and reassuring. "Naomi," she said, her voice laced with an emotion I hadn't heard from her in a long time. A mixture of pride and profound admiration. "I'm so proud of you. For being brave enough to do this, to stand up for Grandma, to face down such blatant deception." My father, who had been listening intently to the unfolding conversations, nodded in agreement, a rare but significant gesture from him. Yes, very brave indeed. Ilara would be proud beyond words. Their words, spoken with such genuine emotion, meant more to me than any monetary inheritance. It was a recognition, an acknowledgement of the difficult path I had chosen, the courage it had taken, and the profound validation that I had done the right thing, the only thing, to honor Grandma's memory. As the evening wound down, some family members lingered, wanting to know more details about Grandma's will, about the hidden compartment, about everything, unable to tear themselves away from the captivating drama that Woolgo had unfolded. I answered their questions patiently, sharing parts of the story, careful not to overshare sensitive details, but also ensuring they understood the gravity and audacity of Aunt Lena's actions. I reiterated that I would be taking immediate legal steps to officially validate the will and secure Grandma's estate, ensuring every penny of her legacy was protected. Many offered their support, some even volunteering to provide sworn statements or testify if needed, their sense of outrage mirroring my own. It was a surprising display of solidarity, a family fractured by deceit, now seemingly united in the pursuit of justice, bound by a shared sense of betrayal. I left the reunion that night feeling utterly exhausted, my body heavy with the emotional weight of the day, but also profoundly relieved. The burden of holding that secret, of knowing the truth and waiting for the right moment to reveal it, had been immense, a constant weight on my shoulders. Now, it was out, released into the open. The fight, I knew, was far from over. Aunt Lena would undoubtedly challenge the will, and there would be legal battles ahead, long and arduous. But I had the truth on my side, an undeniable force, and more importantly, I had Grandma Ilara's unwavering trust and her final wishes to guide me, a clear beacon in the darkness. The quiet, observant child who had promised her grandmother to protect her legacy had finally fulfilled that promise, standing tall against the tide of deceit. And as I drove home, the late-night city lights blurring past, a soft glow against the darkness, I felt a quiet sense of peace settle over me, a gentle warmth in my chest, knowing that Grandma, wherever she was, would be smiling, her spirit resting easy, vindicated. The following weeks were a whirlwind of legal appointments and paperwork, a monotonous but crucial dance with bureaucracy. I retained a lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Ms. Davies, who specialized in estate law. Her reputation preceded her, known for her tenacity and meticulous attention to detail. She was initially skeptical, given the unusual nature of AIT's second will found in a hidden compartment, a narrative that sounded almost too dramatic to be true in the cold light of legal precedent. However, when she saw the official-looking document, its meticulous phrasing, the careful execution, and the distinctive, undeniable signature of a well-known local notary who had been active in the area for decades, her skepticism quickly turned into intrigued determination. "This is quite fascinating, Naomi," Ms. Davies had said during our first meeting, adjusting her spectacles, her eyes gleaming with professional interest. A will found outside traditional probate, concealed with such specific instructions. It speaks volumes about your grandmother's character, her foresight, and her clear anticipation of potential issues. She clearly knew what she was doing, and she clearly anticipated something exactly like this. Her words resonated with me, reinforcing my own understanding of Grandma's profound wisdom. I explained everything, meticulously detailing every interaction, every suspicious word. From Grandma's whispered instruction about the envelope to Aunt Lena's immediate, almost frantic declaration of debts, and her hurried, seemingly desperate sale of the house and its contents. Ms. Davies listened intently, her expression unreadable, occasionally interjecting with a sharp, pointed question or making a quick note on her legal pad. "This certainly paints a picture of deliberate deception on your aunt's part," she concluded, tapping her pen against her legal pad, a small, rhythmic sound in the quiet office. "The quick liquidation of assets, the false claims of debt, the attempt to discredit any other claims to the estate, the exclusion of other family members from the process. It all points to fraud, a premeditated scheme to defraud the estate. We'll need to officially file this will with the probate court and then initiate legal proceedings to contest your aunt's claims, have her prior actions nullified, and recover all the assets that rightfully belong to your grandmother's true estate." The process was daunting, a labyrinth of legal jargon and procedures. Ms. Davies explained the nuances of challenging a previously accepted, albeit informal, claim to an estate, highlighting the difficulties but also the strengths of our case. We gathered all the evidence I had: old photographs of the house before it was sold, detailed records of its market value, and most importantly, the original will itself, now a crucial, undeniable piece of Red Bull evidence. I even had a few receipts and screenshots from online listings of items Aunt Lena had sold, showcasing the often exorbitant prices she had received, which often far exceeded what one would expect for debt-ridden belongings. It was sickening to see how she had profited from Grandma's supposed misfortunes, exploiting not just her mother's memory but the genuine concern of other family members. News of the valid will and the impending legal battle spread quickly through the family, causing further ripples, a cascade of gossip and speculation. Some of the family members who had remained at the reunion, particularly Uncle Arthur and Chloe, proved to be invaluable allies. They offered their unequivocal support, willing to provide sworn statements about Aunt Lena's suspicious behavior and the financial contributions they had been pressured into making under false pretenses. This unexpected show of solidarity was a comforting balm amidst the escalating legal tensions. It proved that while some family bonds were easily broken by greed, others held firm, strengthened by honesty, a shared sense of justice, and a deep respect for Grandma's memory. Aunt Lena, as expected, reacted with a furious, unhinged outrage. Her lawyer, a smarmy, aggressive individual, sent a scathing cease and desist letter, accusing me of defamation, harassment, and attempting to commit fraud. It was a predictable tactic, a desperate attempt to intimidate me into backing down, to scare me into silence. But Ms. Davies just scoffed, a dismissive sound, crumpling the letter into a ball and tossing it into her wastebasket. "Standard procedure for someone caught with their hand in the cookie jar, Naomi," she'd said, a wry smile on her face. "It means we're hitting a nerve. They're scared, and they should be." The legal battle began, a slow, arduous grind through court filings, endless depositions, and contentious arguments. Aunt Lena maintained her innocence with a shocking degree of audacity, claiming the second will was a forgery, a desperate, malicious attempt by me to claim an inheritance I wasn't entitled to, a betrayal of her supposed care for Grandma. She even tried to paint me as a disgruntled granddaughter, jealous of her supposed responsibility in handling Grandma's affairs, a manipulative and calculating individual. It was a vicious attack on my character, a deliberate attempt to discredit me, but I was prepared for it. Grandma Elara's foresight, her clear-eyed understanding of human nature, had prepared me for every possible turn. During one particularly grueling deposition, Aunt Lena, under oath, was forced to confront the glaring inconsistencies in her convoluted story. Ms. Davies systematically dismantled her claims, piece by painful piece, like a skilled surgeon dissecting a faulty organ. She presented irrefutable evidence of Grandma's long-standing financial stability, including old bank statements, meticulously maintained investment portfolios, and tax returns that showed a healthy, managed estate, completely contradicting Lena's narrative of overwhelming debt and impending bankruptcy. The astronomical sale prices of Grandma's personal belongings, far exceeding the distressed sale values Lena had claimed, further exposed her deliberate deception, highlighting the extent of her personal buy. Enrichment. When confronted with the notary's signature on the true will, a signature that had been authenticated by a forensic expert, Aunt Lena became visibly flustered, her face blotchy, her carefully constructed composure crumbling under the relentless scrutiny. She stammered, contradicted herself, her eyes darting nervously around the room, and her elaborate lies began to unravel like a badly knitted sweater, thread by agonizing thread. The turning point came when Ms. Davies presented damning evidence of the financial contributions Aunt Lena had solicited from other family members for the supposed debt relief. The cousin who had given a few $100s to Aunt Lena submitted a sworn affidavit, a legally binding document, stating unequivocally that Aunt Lena had explicitly asked for money to help pay off Grandma's debts, painting a vivid picture of her manipulative tactics. When Aunt Lena was asked under oath about these specific funds, she initially denied receiving them, then claimed they were gifts, and finally, under intense pressure and faced with the undeniable evidence, she admitted they were for miscellaneous expenses related to the estate, a vague and unconvincing explanation that betrayed her guilt. Her evasiveness, her shifting story, and her blatant lies under oath did not go unnoticed. The court was not impressed. In fact, it seemed to solidify their conviction of her guilt. The judge, a stern but fair woman with an acute legal mind and a reputation for impartiality, listened patiently to both sides, allowing each attorney to present their case fully. However, the evidence, particularly the authenticated hidden will, the detailed financial records confirming Grandma's substantial wealth, and the glaring inconsistencies in Aunt Lena's testimony, clearly and overwhelmingly favored my case. The fact that the true will explicitly mentioned me staying when others did not, coupled with the unique circumstance of its hidden compartment, painted a compelling picture of Grandma's true intentions and her astute anticipation of potential deceit within the family. It spoke of a profound trust placed in me, and an equally profound distrust of Aunt Lena. After months of protracted legal proceedings, endless filings, and tense courtroom sessions, the judge finally rendered her decision. The hidden will was declared valid and legally binding, superseding any other claims or arrangements that Aunt Lena had put into place. Aunt Lena's actions were deemed fraudulent, a clear act of deception and malfeasance, and she was ordered to return all proceeds from the illicit sale of Grandma's assets, including the house and personal belongings, as well as any funds she had illicitly collected from family members. The judgment was a complete and resounding victory for me, and more importantly, for Grandma Ilara's memory, a vindication of her foresight and her trust. The news of the verdict sent another shockwave through the family, a final, definitive shattering of the illusion Aunt Lena had so carefully crafted. Aunt Lena was utterly disgraced, her reputation in tatters, her carefully constructed image of responsibility and benevolence irrevocably shattered. She tried to appeal the decision, desperately clinging to her crumbling lies, but her case was weak, built on a foundation of falsehoods, and her appeals were quickly dismissed, her legal efforts futile. She lost everything she had gained through her deception, and the massive legal fees she incurred only added to her complete downfall, leaving her in a worse financial position than she had ever been. Her children, who had supported her lies and perhaps even benefited from them, found themselves ostracized by many family members, their own reputations tarnished by their association with their mother's scheme. The once cohesive, albeit dysfunctional, family was irrevocably changed, forever marked by the bitter legal battle, and the profound betrayal it had exposed. For me, the victory was bittersweet, tinged with a profound sense of melancholy. While I felt a profound sense of justice, a deep satisfaction that Grandma's wishes had been honored, the process had been emotionally draining, a long and arduous journey through grief, anger, and legal complexities. It had exposed the darker side of family, the depths of greed and deception that could exist even within the most seemingly loving relationships. But it had also shown me the strength of my own resolve, a quiet tenacity I hadn't known I possessed, the enduring power of truth to prevail against even the most elaborate lies, and the unexpected kindness of those who stood by me, offering unwavering support. The house, Grandma's house, was returned to me, its legal ownership transferred back into my name. It was empty now, stripped of its familiar belongings, its walls echoing with a profound silence, but it held the indelible echoes of a lifetime of love and wisdom, a silent testament to her enduring spirit. I walked through the quiet rooms, remembering Grandma's stories, her infectious laughter, her unwavering belief in me, each memory a vibrant thread weaving through the emptiness. It would take time, and a great deal of effort, but I knew I would restore it, not just as a house, but as a home, a true testament to Grandma Ilara's vibrant legacy. I decided to keep the study and the fireplace exactly as they were, a permanent reminder of the secret compartment, the hidden truth that had protected Grandma's true wishes and ultimately brought justice. I even planned to place a small plaque by the fireplace, a discreet inscription that only those who knew the story would understand, a quiet homage to Grandma's foresight. I didn't want to be defined by the inheritance, or by the family drama that had engulfed my life. I was Naomi, an artist, a woman who had faced a difficult truth and fought for what was right, not for personal gain, but for integrity and honor. The money would allow me to pursue my art without the constant financial struggle, to build a future that honored Grandma's memory in a way that truly mattered, a future aligned with her values. I planned to use a significant portion of the inheritance to establish a small foundation in Grandma Ilara's name, perhaps to support local artists, emerging talents struggling to find their voice, or to provide educational opportunities for underprivileged children in the community, reflecting Grandma's lifelong passion for learning and creativity. It was a way to ensure her legacy extended far beyond material wealth, reflecting her generosity, her spirit of giving, and her profound belief in the transformative power of knowledge and creativity. The family reunion that year, though still overshadowed by the dramatic events of the previous one, was markedly different. Aunt Lena and her children were notably absent, their seats conspicuously empty, a silent testament to their disgrace. The remaining family members, though still navigating the awkwardness and the lingering emotional residue, seemed more genuine, more open, their interactions less strained, more authentic. There was a quiet understanding in the room, a collective acknowledgement of the truth that had been revealed, a shared experience that had both fractured and, in some ways, purified the family. I didn't gloat, I didn't rub it in, I didn't seek vengeance. I simply existed, a quiet presence, a testament to the power of one person's integrity and unwavering commitment to truth. I often think about Grandma Ilara, about her profound foresight, her quiet strength, her deep understanding of human nature. She knew the complexities of the human heart, the temptations of greed, and she had meticulously planned for it all, leaving no stone unturned. She had entrusted me with a sacred duty, a solemn responsibility, and I had fulfilled it, against considerable odds. The envelope, the hidden will, the dramatic reunion reveal, it all felt like a carefully orchestrated play, with Grandma as the unseen director, guiding me towards the truth, nudging me towards the path of justice. Life moved forward, but the profound lessons learned remained etched in my heart and mind. I learned that family isn't always blood, that true connections are forged in honesty, mutual respect, and unwavering support, not just genetic ties. I learned that some lies can fester and destroy, corrupting relationships and eroding trust, while truth, even when painful and disruptive, ultimately sets you free, liberating both the bearer and those who embrace it. And I learned that the most valuable inheritance isn't always measured in dollars and cents, in material possessions, but in the trust placed in you, the legacy entrusted to your care, and the courage to honor it, no matter the personal cost. I still have the original will, carefully framed and hanging in my restored study, a constant reminder of the day everything changed, a tangible symbol of resilience and truth. It's a testament to Grandma's enduring spirit, her unwavering belief in me, and the day I stood up for her truth, for her legacy, for what was undeniably right. It reminds me that even in the face of betrayal, integrity and quiet strength can prevail, that the quiet whispers of intuition can lead to profound revelations. And that sometimes the biggest battles are fought not with fists or shouting, but with a piece of paper and an unwavering commitment to what is right, a steadfast resolve in the face of adversity. The house, now lovingly restored, filled with new memories, and reinfused with a palpable warmth, became a sanctuary once again, not just for me, but for the genuine connections that had survived the storm. Amen. Beacon of authenticity. It was a place where stories could still be spun, where the comforting scent of cinnamon might one day return, and where the enduring legacy of Grandma Ilara, who stayed when others did not, would live on, true and unblemished. A testament to the power of unwavering love and profound foresight. I now look forward to sharing its warmth and history with those who value sincerity and genuine connection. Ensuring that Grandma's spirit of kindness, wisdom, and foresight continues to ripple through generations, enriching the lives of many, a living embodiment of her enduring spirit. It was more than a house, it was a testament to enduring love, the quiet strength of conviction, and the profound power of truth.